Hey, it's Jazz at Red Panda Reads, and today I'm doing my January reading wrap-up. But before I start, two things. First of all, yes, this is a bookcase. It was actually my partner's bookcase, and I've just swapped all our books. He agreed. He said that was fine. So now I have a bookcase with all my books on, which is super exciting. And secondly, I cut off the top of my finger when trying to make potatoes dauphinoise. So that's why there's the bandage. I mean, it looks small, but it hurt. It hurt a lot and it was a bit grim. But it's healing a week on and it's starting to look better. So yeah, that's an update on my life. New bookcase space, and let's get started. So the first book that I read in January was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This, I would say, is a young adult fantasy set in our world, but where people who are magical draw monsters towards them who feast on their magic, which is known as mana. This book follows our main character, Elle, who is in this magical school, which all young people get transported to when they reach a certain age and have to go through their education without being killed by monsters. I really adored the concept, and the monsters in this book were fantastic. They were so creative, so many limbs, which was just uncomfortable at times. And also the school itself was phenomenal. It had such a personality to it and would react to your thoughts and try and do everything in its power to make you fail and ultimately die. However, the things that I struggled a bit with this book was the characters. I would say it's a lot more plot focused, so that didn't matter too much. But there's this romancy thing between our main character Elle and Orion, and there's this whole joke that they're not actually together, but they actually are, and it's brought up in every conversation about them, and I just got really bored of it. Like, I didn't find it funny. I didn't really care. Maybe I'm just not a romantic at heart, or maybe I'm a really fussy romantic, but I didn't really care if any of these characters lived or died in this school that was trying to kill them. So next up, we've got a book I've already talked about in my Books That Make Me Happy video, and that is Sourdough by Sloan. This book was an absolute gem. It's really strange, but just really warm and heartfelt. It follows our main character Lois, who moves to San Francisco to start a new job programming robotic arms, and she gets given this sourdough starter. It follows her as she gets involved in the bread making markets within San Francisco and finds out the history and potential dangers of her sourdough starter. Would highly recommend. So now let's move on to the horror novels. And I mean, obviously, this has been all over BookTube. That is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This book follows our young female protagonist who gets a letter from her cousin who married an Englishman saying, "Help me, they're trying to poison me, they're going to kill me." And so our main character, Naomi, who lives in Mexico, goes to see her cousin and find out what's going on in this horribly haunted manor house. And of course, the family who live there are all a little bit weird. The servants are all strange. The house itself is just crumbling apart and full of mold and really dank and horrible. And you slowly find out what's been going on in this house. I really enjoy strong-willed, glamorous female protagonists, and Naomi is that, so absolutely love that. And the story didn't go in a way I was expecting it. The more it unfolded, the more I was enjoying it, and I think it has lots of horror tropes like, you know, spooky house, weird family, but it also did something really original with that, and it was actually probably my favourite read of January. It's maybe one of the first proper horrors I've read in a long time, because horrors tend to scare me, but this wasn't a book that gave me nightmares. It was a book that made me want to read more. So I would really recommend. So the next book I'm going to talk about is No Longer Human by Junji Ito, and this book has lots of trigger warnings, and I'm going to put them all down in the description below. So if you are considering reading it, please look at those, because it is a very hard novel and deals with lots of very tough issues. And because it's in manga format as well, it's very graphic. So No Longer Human is an adaptation of Osamu Dazai's original novel, No Longer Human. And it follows the life of a young guy as he feels detached from society and feels that he has to be the clown and hide how he's really feeling. And he has some horrible experiences within his life, and there's multiple references to rape and suicide in this book. Let me just show you the cover. This book is considered to be the author's suicide note as well. So I think you can probably tell now it's quite a hard read. To sum it up, I would say this book is an exhausting, fascinating, horrible reflection on humans. I found it in a really interesting and moving read, and if you can stomach its content, I would recommend it. Its portrayal of mental health using pictures is fascinating. However, I do not think I can read it again. Yeah, incredible book, will stay with me for a long time, kind of very haunting. Check the trigger warnings if you're interested. The next book I am going to mention also talks about suicide, but less graphically because it's not a manga novel, and that is The Midnight Library by Haig. So I was super excited about this book and thought it was definitely going to be a 5-star read, but it wasn't. I think I was going through a part of my life where I was having quite a few regrets about certain life decisions, and I thought I would pick up this book and solve all my regrets. And I don't think I was consciously aware of that. But afterwards I was like, yeah, this book didn't solve everything. Like, reading helps a lot, but it's not going to solve your problems a lot of the time. So I think that's one of the reasons I didn't enjoy it as much as I was expecting. The Midnight Library is about a woman who feels that her life is going in a direction she didn't want. She feels like she's failed, she's got a lot of regrets, and then slowly everybody in her life seems to no longer need her, and so she decides to take her own life. However, she then finds herself awake in this library where she gets the opportunity to relive different lives that she could have had if she'd made a certain decision at a certain point. And it was really fun going through all the lives that Nora could have had, from everything to being an explorer in the Antarctic to a famous singer. So there were all these wonderful little insights into all her different lives. The thing I thought was really poignant was the fact that our main character, without realising it, had done all these little things in her lives that had actually made a positive difference to people without her even realising it. And in different lives where she hadn't made those same decisions, of course, those things didn't happen. So I think it's really important for all of us to remember that every day we are doing things, such as even like holding open a door for a stranger or smiling for someone. All those things can have such great impacts on people's lives, even if you think it's just really a really small gesture. So always remember that people do need you, and you're worth so much, all of you. So the last 3 books what I listened to on audio tape. The first one of that is Exciting Times. No, I have not just read a WhatsApp that has popped up on my phone, nor is that the sequel to the Charles Dickens novel Bad Times. I'm currently editing, and I just noticed that my joke backfired and I became the joke. The Charles Dickens novel is not Bad Times, it's Hard Times. I'm a booktuber. It's absolutely fine. It's fine. Yep. Let's continue. This is in fact a book by an Irish author, Naoise Dolan, about a young woman named Ava who goes to teach English in Hong Kong. While she is there, she ends up in a tangled love triangle between a rich English banker and a rich Hong Kong-born lawyer. And she doesn't know what to do. The things I loved about this book was there's a lot of commentary on the English language. So our main character is Irish and she's teaching English to children in Hong Kong, and that she's teaching them a lot about proper English. So I found that really interesting. However, I found our main character and most of the other characters incredibly unlikable. And not only that, but I didn't always understand the motivations behind the main character Ava. It has some similarities in how it's structured to Sally Rooney's writing, where you see a lot of the characters' thoughts processes and how they may not always be communicating those thoughts to the people they care about. However, in Sally Rooney's novel, I really got those characters, whereas in Exciting Times, I really struggled, and therefore I found myself not really caring for them and kind of just didn't want any of them to get together and was just like, you're just going to make each other unhappy. That's how I felt. And I found the ending very unsatisfying. I almost feel like if I had to choose who got together in the end, I would go for the one that you're not supposed to feel should be together. I would love to know if you've read it, whether you had a preference with who Ava ended up with, if she does end up with any of them. For some reason, I was drawn to Julian, which I don't think you're supposed to. The last two books I read were historical fictions, and the first of those was The Familiars by Stacey. Hello, it's future Yellow Jazz here. I want to redo my explanation of The Familiars because I don't think I did a very good job, and I really enjoyed the book and want to do its description justice. The Familiars is the second book by Stacey I've read, the first of which was The Foundling, which I was really disappointed by because it really felt like there was no character development and the ending was incredibly rushed. However, people told me The Familiars was fantastic and I'm so glad I picked it up. It's set in the early 1600s and follows a young woman named Fleetwood who was married off at a very young age to a rich family, and she is desperately trying to have a child, but most of her children have died during childbirth, and she finds a letter saying that she is very likely herself to die in her current state and with the current child she's carrying. So she stumbles across a midwife called Alice Gray and befriends her and asks her to help her deliver the baby and keep both her and her baby safe. However, on the backdrop of all this is the 1612 witch trials that occurred in the UK, and it's based on real historical facts where a number of women were accused of being witches, and the majority, with the exception of one, were killed. The thing I loved about this book is not only the historic part of it, but also Fleetwood's character grows so much. She starts as quite a meek, reserved woman living in a society which is where women are really repressed. However, by the end, she has grown so much. She is speaking out for what she believes in. And although I think the writing was a little bit lenient towards her husband to the end, a little bit too forgiving, I thought Fleetwood's character, her relationship with Alice and that friendship, which was just beautiful, was phenomenal, and I really loved the book. The last book I read, and now I need to try and get the title right, is the Guernsey Literacy and Potato Pill Pie Society book by Mary Shaffer. This book is set during the Guernsey occupation by the Nazis in the Second World War, which before I read it, I knew absolutely nothing about it. So Guernsey is one of the Channel Islands between France and the UK and is actually closer to France than the UK. This book is about a young English woman, Juliet, who is an author who starts a correspondence with a man who lives in Guernsey. And then she decides she wants to go over there to discover about what happened during the war and what happened to Elizabeth, who was someone who lived in Guernsey but got sent to a concentration camp. So I initially liked the idea of the letter format. It's very digestible. My only qualm is that I didn't feel that the characters had distinct voices, and therefore I didn't always feel there was as much personality as could have been done, but that could partly be due to the fact it is letter format. So it's absolutely fascinating book. It's a very cozy read as well, in part, despite the fact that it does talk about concentration camps and how people were treated during the Second World War, but it's a part of the Second World War I knew nothing about, and a really enjoyable read with lots of lovely characters. So that's all the books I read in January. I had a really enjoyable January. Like, it was just a really good reading month. And although only one of these books got a 5-star review from me, all of them have left impressions and were at least fun to read. So I'm excited for February. Have a wonderful week, everyone. I will be seeing you all very soon and talking about more bookish things.